Welcome to Spiritual Cartel, Meeting of Emotional Sobriety, Part 2. I am pleased to introduce you to Donna J, who has kindly come and agreed to come and share with us again. Thank you, Donna. It's over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Spiritual Cartel, and thank you, Purdy, for even presenting this as an idea for me to do. I was talking to a friend in the fellowship, and I feel like this is an expansion of my recovery and the work that I do in order, like, to do a workshop like this. And anytime I think of workshop, I think of a learning opportunity and with visuals, because visuals help it be less like you're learning. You can also see some things. My sobriety and clean date is August 5th, 2000. That was the date that I was surrendered. I didn't stop using or drinking. I didn't know that was going to be my last day. Little did I know that that was going to be the beginning of this path that brings me into this new life. And so when I was asked to do this workshop on emotional sobriety, I knew that it was not going to be a difficult thing to do, because really all that I was going to do is share my experience. When I came into AA, I came into AA first, and CA is a new fellowship for me. And thank you, because it gives me an opportunity to share my entire story. And AA was singleness of purpose, and I couldn't talk about the cocaine, and I couldn't talk about the freebasing, and I couldn't talk about the crack, because it went in that order, right? So when I came in, I was in a secure or safe environment. I was in a therapeutic community, which is like a sober facility. It wasn't a 12-step base joint. There was no steps. It was just a behavior modification. There were groups, and you talked about your feelings. Now, the obsession to drink and drug had been removed, but I still didn't know how to be. I'm very grateful that it was in a controlled environment, because I was forced to follow rules. I was forced to clean my room, make my bed, be honest, sign in and out of the bathroom, because I didn't have any experience after the years I spent drinking and drugging being responsible. So I can attribute the reason I was able to live without a drink and a drug and show up to life was because of that environment. And I was able to see that basically the only reason I was willing to be honest was I wanted to be able to go home on the weekends. And that's how I lived my life. I was going to do the right thing, but I needed to know how I was going to benefit. And that's not spiritual recovery or emotional sobriety, when you do things because of a selfish reason. So I knew that if I was going to do this, I needed to do it in two parts. I needed to do one that was focused more on self-will, so I can see the best that I can do relying on self. And I don't even see that that's the best that I can do, because I'm convinced that that's the only way to be. And if that's the only way I think I can be, I'm not going to question whether I'm doing it good or bad, because if I think that I'm not living well, then that's going to be too fearful. So I don't even gauge. I'm like, this is just who I am. And that's how I used to explain myself to people. If they brought up my behavior, I would say, well, this is just who I am. Like, I was very flippant, very arrogant. If I hurt your feelings, I would say, oh, lighten up. I was only joking. Like, I never was accountable. I always flipped it. And so once I come into the program, I start having these emotional hangovers. It's like, oh my God, I don't know how to feel these feelings. And they don't seem to go away very easy. I mean, they linger. If I said something that hurt you, oh my God, I would just feel so like bad about it. And I didn't know. And what I realize now is that I ran from my feelings. I hid my feelings. I numbed my feelings. So I come into the fellowship, and after that dash, I'm powerless over cocaine, I'm powerless over alcohol, but it's after that dash that there's so much unmanageability. But see, I don't realize that the unmanageability is my behavior because I'm too busy looking at your behavior. See, I think I'm okay. It's you that's the problem. And I also think that unmanageability is the things that I can't accomplish outside of me. Like I'm not able to keep a job. And I was the type of addict that would quit a job before they caught on. And it's crazy because I'm trying to stay a step ahead, but I'm putting myself behind the 8 ball every time. So I gave a handout last week after we looked at the presentation. And that's the kind of thing that I do every time I can feel myself relying on self. I don't know. I know for me, I've been, the drugs and alcohol was removed on August 5th, 2000. My spiritual path has not always been a straight line. There have been times when self, my ego, my thinking wants to be the ultimate authority, convinces me that, oh, you don't have time to pray in the morning. You got to get to the gym. And because I'm so accustomed to believing my thinking mind, I follow it. And then all of a sudden I find that the word self jumps in front of every other word, self-interest, self-absorbed, self-seeking. And I don't like how that feels. See, I've been awakened to peace and freedom that I can feel when I'm walking the other way. And I don't ever want to live like that on a consistent basis ever again. And so for me, I see that those situations were needed so that I could have a deeper experience with letting go of this belief that I'm separated from power. And so it's not a bad thing if anybody in here who's been here for a while feels like, oh my God, something more is needed. Well, maybe that's your truth. Maybe something more is needed. Maybe coming to this workshop last week was what was orchestrated for you to see that the spirit within wants more of you. And that's how I look at my recovery. The pain, misery, and despair that I experienced, that I was living my life like I was dying. Man, you guys understand that. That was needed for me to see a light bright enough to attract my attention and for me to walk towards it. And I walk towards it with a recovered addict alcoholic who is leading me down the spiritual path so I can finally go home and I can live my life like I am one with God. And I'm at a place that I realize that 1 + 1 is 1, me and God are one. But how do I get there? And this might be confusing for some of our new friends, but this was how my teachers spoke to me. Like they spoke to me based on their truth, not so much for me to get it, because they probably knew that I wasn't going to get it at that time. And it was very comforting when Rashid said, Donna, this is not about catching up, it's about catching on. The interesting thing is, even though I didn't understand the relationship they had with spirit and God, it just felt right. Like I didn't understand it, but I understood it. And because of that, I was willing to go to any length. If they told me to do something, I did it because I realized that how they were being is what I've always wanted, but I never saw it demonstrated. Like spiritual principles are not new, but I didn't see too many people demonstrating them. And so, this is like monkey see, monkey do. And that's why I'm so grateful for my fellows, because I get to see what accountability looks like. I see when you guys do 10 steps. I see when you share in a meeting. You're being open, you're being honest, you're being accountable. So thank you for letting me see in real time how God wants us to be. So how do we get here? So the slides this week is basically, I'm just going to take you down the path that we go down. How do we get from last week's was I'm clean and sober, now what? Right? And the handout that I gave, there were some questions. Where am I still emotionally reactive? What emotions do I most often suppress, avoid, or explode with? Where am I still trying to manage and control? Am I peaceful or am I just functioning in life? And where am I still suffering, even clean and sober? And if you, and like number 5, where am I still suffering? See, we have so much pride that we will suffer in silence and not let people know. Because see, I'm supposed to be in this fellowship and I'm supposed to be joyous, happy, and free, and I'm supposed to be experiencing these promises, but I'm really suffering inside, but I'm doing what I've always done. I'm more concerned about what you think about me than how I feel about me. But see, that all changes. So I'm going to share my screen. And the thing I did last week too, we talked about emotional sobriety, and I mentioned Bill Wilson's letter, The Next Frontier, and he had written that for the Grapevine. This is Cocaine Anonymous, and I talked about Grapevine having an online presence. Well, CA also has an online presence. And Purdy's going to put in the chat that Cameron F. is looking for people who got sober online. You can submit your story. So when Purdy puts that in, there's a phone number and there's an email address so that you can share your story. So I just wanted to give equal time to CA because Grapevine is an AA publication. So let's go down this path. I got a number of slides and we're going to go through the way God wants us to go through this. And I'm going to share my screen. Take notes if you need to, but Purdy is going to provide you with a PDF of the slides, and there's also going to be another handout afterwards. So if you did last week's exercise, you may be willing to see that perhaps you need to go through the work again. I usually give my sponsees, and I usually do an unmanageability exercise so I can see, oh, this is why I'm not at peace. See, because my mind won't let me see it. So here we go. And I want to thank you guys for allowing me to feel very comfortable doing this. You know, we're part of this. None of us should ever be afraid to share with one another because you know me and I know you. So let me get busy and we're going to go through this thing. So emotional sobriety. So we learn to live with peace, with purpose, and with impact. So if I live this way, this living with, and it's interesting, the with is I'm going with the flow of life. Like life is going in this direction and I'm flowing with life. And so I'm able to feel the peace within. I have purpose in my path, and the impact I have is we get to be of service to one another. So last week, from awareness to action. So last week you made yourself aware of, are you clean and sober? And everybody said yes, because we're here, we're not using. But are you free? And where are you still running the show? So this week is about the path, not just seeing the problem, but walking towards freedom. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at this path that takes us from emotional instability to emotional sobriety. So when self is no longer enough. So emotional sobriety is not willpower. I can't will myself into being peaceful. I can't will myself to being calm and sane and respond instead of react. It's a reliance. So at some point we have to realize that managing ourselves isn't working, controlling outcomes isn't bringing peace, and fixing others isn't fixing us, and trying harder isn't making us free. So these realizations open the door for us to move forward. So before change, there has to be willingness. And before willingness, there has to be humility. See, I have to see that self-management is exhausting me. All I'm doing is tiring myself out. So there's got to be a moment where we begin to see that self cannot save self. So this breakdown of self-reliance really opens the door. Willingness opens the door. And so if I want change, I have to admit that of my own, I'm not enough. So how do I get willing? Willingness comes when I stop arguing with reality. Stop pretending that I'm unhappy. Stop pretending that I don't feel at peace. Stop pretending. It's interesting how, pride, somebody will, and I know you guys say this as a greeting in the UK, how are you doing? And, here stateside, that's not how we normally, greet one another. But oftentimes we say that we're okay, and okay just seems to be just so limited, right? And how many of us are sitting in limitation? I'm okay. So I have to realize my reality is that I can't, managing myself is not working, controlling outcomes is not bringing me peace, fixing others is not fixing me, and trying harder isn't making me free. Can I admit that? So what does emotional sobriety look like? Emotional sobriety means learning to live without being ruled by our reactions. So instead of trying to control everything, we begin to pause before reacting, accept life as it is, stop forcing outcomes, and rely on God instead of self-will. And so this is how peace begins. So emotional sobriety isn't emotional suppression. I'm not suppressing my unhappiness. I'm not suppressing my anger, because that's not helping, because eventually it's going to explode, and it's going to explode. All it takes is somebody to say one thing that I don't like. All of a sudden they get the wrath of my emotions. Emotional sobriety is learning not to be ruled by our reactions. And peace begins when self-will starts loosening. And it will, if we're willing to go to any length and do this work. So I have a question for you. What are you willing to do differently to achieve emotional sobriety? And if you're not sure what the answer is to this question, perhaps the answer will come as we go through this presentation. So I always like to have a fun slide. So this next slide. Are you tired of playing at being in control? Overthinking, managing, defending, blaming, worrying, controlling, rescuing, justifying, overthinking, planning, pleasing, avoiding, forcing, fixing. So this is what I have to do in order to be in control. I'm playing at it because I'm not really getting what I want. I'm making myself more frustrated. So these behaviors don't produce peace, joy, or happiness. And many of these behaviors, they look like, well, I'm being responsible by planning. I've got to worry because, if I don't worry, then I may overlook it and it may pass me by. And I got to rescue other people because, I'm so concerned about people. Like, they appear to be responsible, but they're really fear-driven. So this is what self-will running looks like in real life. So, have you exhausted the ways you try to manage life on your own? Do you look like that little guy? So, what makes emotional sobriety even possible for people like us? Well, emotional sobriety becomes possible when we follow the path laid out in the steps. Right? These spiritual tools are laid at our feet, but I need the humility to bend down and pick them up. So as we do the work, resentment loosens. We're not carrying it like a sack. Resentments from 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Fear loses its grip. It's not like that corroding thread. It's like putting on a coat that every thread is made out of fear. And I put this coat on, and everywhere I go, this coat is choking me because fear keeps showing up. Everything makes me afraid. So all of a sudden that coat starts loosening until, eventually like the coat opens and it does, and we don't need to carry the fear. Dishonesty is exposed. I get to see how I have not been honest, the things that I say, the things that I don't say. Self-centeredness is challenged. I get to see when I'm being selfish. I just there's a knowing that happens. So when these things loosen, when these blocks begin to come down, then something happens that we could not make happen ourselves. So remember, the spirit, the God, the power is within, but it's blocked. So as the blocks start falling, then we get connected. And what does it say? We were able to react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. So when these other things happen, when resentment loosens, fear loses its grip, dishonesty is exposed, self-centeredness is challenged, then how all of a sudden we're able to react sanely and normally? We don't force the change. God does in us what effort alone cannot do. But I got to be willing to believe that that's possible. So the good news, you don't have to keep carrying the burden of running your life alone. There is a way through. It doesn't begin with perfection. That's the lie that you tell yourself. Because that's the lie I've told myself my entire life, that I've got to be perfect. And it's hard to believe that I can do this, because if I think I have to be perfect, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing on this spiritual path, but yet I tell myself I've got to do it perfectly. How am I going to do something perfect when I have no idea what needs to happen or what is going to happen? And the good news is that it all begins with willingness. And I've heard myself say the word willingness many times in doing the slide presentation. So this is going to be the turning point, right? You do not have to keep carrying life alone. Willingness matters more than perfection. I can't be perfect at something that I don't know what it entails, but perhaps I can be willing to try. I've been trying everything else. I've been trying controlling and managing and pursuing and fixing. Well, Donna, be willing to try something else. I could see the proof is in the pudding. I can see the people that are on this path. Something's happening within them, and they've done the same thing that they're asking me to do. So you don't have to try to figure it out anymore. So what is the question? Will this program work for me too? I see it working in you. And it's interesting because I saw that something was working in the recovered addict and alcoholic that I saw that was placed in my life. And I say placed in my life because I wouldn't have known who to look for. I believe that I'm very grateful. I know it's working for them. They're telling me that all I need is willingness. But they've actually, for those of us that are in the big book, they've actually stated what is happening to them. And here are a few of them. Before we get to step 2, what are they saying? They were taken from a scrap heap to a level of life better than the best they had ever known. Does that make me willing? Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. Does that make me willing to believe? I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. The power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. So this is what happened to others who were willing to go to any length in this program. So does this make you feel comfortable that you're willing to go to any length and not worry about, well, what's going to happen and do I have to do it perfect? I mean, just these results alone is enough for me, especially how I show up when I'm living life in self-will. Here are some others. There has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. Revolutionary. See, I can't do anything revolutionary. Any kind of change that I make, trust me, I change and then I go right back. As soon as something challenging happens, I revert right back to fear. I revert right back to worry. If somebody shows up and not the way I want them to show up, I revert back to anger. They found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. So as these blocks start falling down, then the flow comes in and through us. A new power. My ego stops being the ultimate authority. And I start living inside out. See, I was living outside in. The things outside of me had to be okay for me to be okay. But see, I had no control over the things outside of me. I was only okay when they was in alignment with my belief systems of how things were supposed to be. But as soon as they went out of alignment, I'm screwed up again. A sense of direction. We get to just know. They show how the change came over them. They're not saying how they changed. I love our big book. Sometimes it's a word by word exercise. They show how the change came over them. And if you think about it, if all we're asked to bring to the deal is willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty, those three words don't have the power to create change. Grace meets that. And God does what God does. You know, in the third step, build with me, do with me. Maybe the with I bring is the willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty, and God brings the power. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. Our thinking becomes on a higher plane of existence. I remember, you know, we'd be in meetings and people would come up to one of my teachers and they would, you know, be complaining about the problem. And he would look at them and say, well, what are you doing way down there? Like, what are you doing way down there with the problem? Higher plane of existence. Where can I be of service? Where can I be of help? Where can I just be okay and I don't know and still be at peace? That was the biggest piece for me, is being okay and not know. But as my willingness to believe, faith is a result of results. So we start to believe and then we start having faith. So after reading what the people before us are stating on these slides, is your yes sounding louder inside that will this program work for you? Do you feel within you that your yes is getting loud? So if you believe that this program can work for you, what's next? So we come to believe that there's a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity. Step 2 is the possibilities of a new way of life. Possibility thinking. See, I was afraid to believe that anything good would happen for me because I didn't know how to get past where I was at. So step 2 is where we stop believing we're the solution and we become willing to believe something greater can be the solution and can do what self-reliance can't do. So what did you guys just do last week? You examined the evidence in step 1. The best I can do is I'm full of fear. I don't know how to deal with my emotions. And I am now convinced that I'm not the solution. So step 2 is where possibility begins. I stopped believing I am the answer. And I had to see that I couldn't get past where I'm at. And I got to see last week that that's how I was most of my life. and just not drinking and not using, I'm really not getting past that. So it's so important that we examine the evidence in step one after the dash, the unmanageability, the emotional instability, and what helps me to think that this new life is possible, the change I see in others. That's why it's so important that we stay in this fellowship. Normal people don't understand, well, you haven't had a drink or a drug in like 25 years. Why are you still here? Because I need to show that this program works. You have to see the change. So that's why we all stay here. And it's interesting that we're on different paths, I'm here 25 years. Some people are here 40 years. We're on this path, but we're still together in the same now. Isn't that amazing? Like, I can't be way down the path because I'm not going to be able to see you. I'm not going to be able to know when you need help if I'm way down there. And you're not going to be able to catch up if you're way back there. So it doesn't matter where we are. We're still together in the now. So how do we begin to believe? Because that's the questions that we have. Well, how? They tell us. And they make it so easy. Lay aside prejudice. Lay aside everything you think you know. That's why a lot of our meetings, we say the lay aside prayer, the set aside prayer. Lay aside everything I know. And the thing with prejudice is I'm prejudiced without even having any experience of what I claim not to like or not to be willing to believe. Before coming into the fellowship, I had no experience in relying upon God, but yet I have this resistance about something that I don't even have any experience. I know about pray and worship from Catholic school, but I don't know anything about reliance. So lay aside everything that you think you know. Express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than yourself. Now look how easy they're making it sound. Lay aside what you think you know. Express a willingness to believe. And if you have to put another willing in front of that, do so. Express even a willingness to be willing to believe. So they know that we're coming with this with no experience, so they're not going to tell us you have to have faith. Admit the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe. So while your ego is telling you, no, we're great big such and muches and we got this, they're saying, just admit the possible existence of an intelligence that is more creative. See, I'm so limited in my intelligence. It's mine. You know, when it says think outside the box, I mean, that's how I think of this power within. It goes way outside the box. And a spirit of the universe, a spirit that connects all. So I realized that, wait a minute, I've been living my life like I'm separated, but can I believe that there's a power that has more intelligence than me and will connect me to all? Possibly, Donna, believe it. Earnestly seek. What does that look like? Show up. Do my step work. Continue to go down this path and not remember. It says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, but we loiter. We take our time doing step 4. We don't want to share all in step 5. We're afraid to make amends, but just earnestly stay on this path. And do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. See, when I was growing up, I only had 3 terms: God, Jesus, and Christ. And those 3, for whatever reasons, wasn't sufficient for me because they reminded me of the nuns like forcing me, my parents forced me to go to church, and then I didn't understand the way to God was through Jesus, and how do I get to him? I mean, it just didn't make sense. But check this out. There are so many terms that I have no association with. Like spirit of the universe, czar of the heaven. My mind doesn't have this preconceived notion of not liking it. So honestly ask myself, maybe it's the word God that bothers me. Maybe fellowship of the Spirit. That sounds inviting. What does that mean to me? And you do that, and you read all of the terms in one paragraph, and you'll see, wait a minute, my conception of God is bigger than I thought. Right? So they're helping us along this path because they know that this is the first time we're willing to let go of control with a power that we have no experience with. We can't see, feel, or touch. But all we know, it did something. And that's why I always say to people, go back to your last day of drinking and drugging so that perhaps you'll start saying that instead of stop drinking, that perhaps you realize that, wait a minute, something happened to me, something very powerful. And maybe that's the willingness to keep you down this path, to keep you earnestly seeking, because you know the power has already started working. Well, the power has always been working. So we begin with willingness, not certainty. Nothing on this slide says that you have to be certain of anything. Again, you don't need to have perfect faith to start. And are we willing to, so I love this creative intelligence. Am I willing to be open to wisdom beyond my thinking that connects everything? So an open mind is enough to begin spiritual growth. So that's how we begin to believe. And all of this was shared with us on page 4647. And then it says, at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth. So they're giving us what we need to begin. Well, that doesn't sound too difficult. So this was what my life looked like all my life. Emotional instability is unmanageability. So we're not just dealing with substance use, but how we live inside of ourselves. So having trouble with personal relationships, couldn't control our emotional natures, were a prey to misery and depression, couldn't make a living, had a feeling of uselessness, full of fear. We were unhappy and we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. It's interesting because I wasn't connected to the God within and I was relying on everything outside of me wasn't enough to bring me peace and joy. I'm having trouble with personal relationships because I need people to show up the way I need them to show up. It's interesting. I couldn't see that it's not that people wouldn't show up differently. I couldn't see that perhaps they couldn't. They did the best that they could. And having trouble with personal relationships, see, if you don't show up the way I want you to show up, then I'm not going to be around you. And I don't think that's what God intends for us to do, is to stay separated from one another. I think, can I learn how to be okay? Now, if you're going to cause me like harm, I'm going to stay away. But I'm not going to stay away just because maybe, you're a little difficult. Maybe you're angry all the time. Maybe I get to see, not maybe, but I get to see that the reason why you're angry is that what's going on within you. We get to look at people from a different perspective. Couldn't control my emotional natures because as soon as life doesn't show up the way I want it to, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be worried. And they go from one to another. It's like the weather. If it's a good day, I feel good. If it's raining, I don't feel good. Couldn't make a living. Interesting about making a living because I have a job, but I don't feel fulfilled. And I have financial insecurity. Is never enough money. I don't know how to manage my money. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And it's interesting because when I was in recovery, I had no respect for money. I remember when I was using, every time I put my hand in my pocket to take money out, by the end, all of those bills were crumbled up like a ball, crumbled up money. I didn't respect money. Taking money out of the bank, knowing that I had bills that needed to be paid, I didn't care. So I don't have any experience. And making a living, I don't know how to be a worker amongst workers because I always want your job. I can't be satisfied and realize that perhaps, Donna, you have to grow and work your way up. I always wanted what I didn't have. Had a feeling of uselessness. It's interesting. I realized that I had assigned myself the role. I assigned myself the role of a victim. I was telling myself I wasn't good enough because I was too busy looking outside of myself. And if I saw something about you that I liked, that I admired, then I would say to myself, see, they're better than you. See, you can never do that. Full of fear. Well, that goes without saying because fear is underlying everything. I never was able to walk into a room just being. I couldn't. We were unhappy. And it's interesting about unhappy. You don't even know why you're not unhappy. You can't even put your finger on it. And couldn't seem to be a real help to other people because I was too busy needing you to help me. Wow. So are you convinced if that's how we're showing up and we can't get past that, are you convinced of your need for power? Are you tired of being tired? That's really how we have to be. Step one, it never gets more complicated than one for me. Like I have to see, I am powerless to change me. So what do they tell us? Now, this is out of our big book that we were addicts, and I changed it. I put addicts in. We are addicts, that we were addicts and alcoholics and could not manage our own lives, drunk, high, or sober or clean. Do you now see? I don't care if you're high, sober, clean. How I'm showing up is the same. Nothing is changing. That probably no human power could have relieved our drug addiction and alcoholism. I have to stop making people my saviors. They're not going to be able to save me because as soon as they're not available, as soon as there's something more I need, I'm going to be angry at them and it's not relieving me. So do I realize that me or nobody else can relieve? And let's look at the drugs. Was anybody's love, anybody's concern enough for me to stay stopped? Nope. It didn't care how much you loved me, how much you worried about me. That problem was removed by grace. That God could and would if he was sought. So step 1 and step 2 leads us right here. So what do we see? Human power is not enough. But the question becomes, am I convinced I need God? See, that's the thing, because I can go through this work and take myself through the work and not realize that I need God. So I like when they said probably no human power. So as far as they could see from their own experience, no human power could relieve it. So are you convinced for your need for power? And if so, I know I can't see it because I'm looking at this deck, but put your thumb up. If you're convinced, and maybe I'll ask this question again so I can see how many thumbs comes up. If you're convinced that you need power and that you need more power. So what step 3 requires? So as you can see, I'm taking you down this path on these steps. So what step 3 requires? So before we can turn our will and our life over to God, we must be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Do you see that now? We must be rid of the selfishness. We must, or it kills us, because it says that our problem is rooted in selfishness and self-centeredness. It's all about me, 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 me. I have to have God's help because I can't get past where I'm at and I can't change me. All I'm doing is trying to live. And we looked at that slide where it said, are you exhausted of all the ways that you're trying to live? And all you're doing is creating chaos and confusion. And we have to quit playing God. So step 3 is not casual. This is vital for the rest of my life. I have to see self-will as dangerous because all I'm doing is hurting me. I'm hurting other people, and I have to stop trying to be in charge. And I got to see that God is not a side issue. Like, it's not a casual thing that I turn to. It's interesting because I can be willing to have God manage some things and I'm going to manage other things, but everything I manage turns into a big box of crazy. I tried to manage relationships and got real sick. And thank God I was able to go through the work again to see, wait a minute, Donna, your reliance upon God is not as strong as it needs to be, because I was relying on this person. All of a sudden, I forgot that no human power. All of a sudden, I was making this man my God. I made myself sick and I made his life miserable. So we make this decision in step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Step 2 gives us hope. And step 3 gives direction. So this is the transfer of authority. Am I willing to realize that I am not the ultimate authority? Because the best I can do is not very much. This is not about trying harder, but I'm no longer running the show. Am I willing to give up leadership? Am I willing to allow the power to direct me? And a director of a film or a play, they know all the roles. They know where the camera needs to go. They sit with the editor. The editor doesn't sit by himself. The director's there with him because the director has the vision of the final version. So am I willing to have God be the director in this drama of life? And the ultimate, he's the principal, ultimate authority, not my ego, and the Father. And if you have a hard time with the word Father, a comforter, somebody who's going to comfort you. So we take this third step, and step 4 is the awakening of awareness. So step 4 shows me what has really been driving me. So I begin to see how fear was driving my life. I think that it's resentments, but behind every part of the resentment, there's fear that I'm not who I say I am. I'm fear that you're not going to show up the way I think I need you to show up. I'm fearful because what I want, my ambition, I'm not going to get it. My personal relationships, I worry about what people think based on how I think the rest of my life is not working out. Emotional sobriety, emotions, I think that I need all of this stuff for me to be okay, and I don't know how to, I think that I need care, I need love, I need protection, but I don't know how to find that, so I'm full of fear. And then there's a financial insecurity. I get to see how self-centered distorts reality. It's interesting because when I did my inventory, what was real powerful, that I needed so much from you. I needed you to love me, like me, nurture me, respect me. It was real powerful when I saw what I was asking from you, I wasn't doing for me. I want you to love me, but Donna, do you love you? Are you showing up respectful? You want people to respect you, but are you respecting you? And for me, that's where real humility, it's like my head just started bowing, like, wow. Like it was like one of those, like, wow. Like I could never see life from the perspective that I was able to see it in step 4. So what starts changing? Denial weakens. I can't keep holding on to what I think I need. I thought that people needed to apologize. I wasn't letting anybody off the hook. They had to pay for what they did. And it's so amazing that nobody had to pay for me to be free. Honesty strengthens. I'm able to be honest. Like, Donna, where were you self-seeking, and where were you selfish, and where were you dishonest, and where were you full of fear, and who were you harming? So all of a sudden I stop looking at you and I start looking at me. I'm finally off the people because I get to see that my behavior, I get to see I was doing a lot of demanding. I'm demanding from you what you couldn't give. And that was also very powerful when I was able to see people from a different perspective and realize that most of us, if not all of us, are victims of generational dysfunction. I got a chance to look back at my mom. She was one of 13 kids, and her parents put her someplace somebody else raised her. Did my mom have abandonment issues? Maybe that's why she was so in control, right? We get to really look at people, look at the human race as a member of the human race, not as this great big such and much that's looking down and judging. And we begin to see ourselves clearly. So, my blaming others, I was blaming others way past the expiration date. When I do my 4th step, I ask God to reveal who should be on my list. And I put the number of years I've had the resentment. So I'm mad at you for what you did to me, but how come I'm not mad at me for holding on to it? And how come I don't see that all I'm doing is like, if you're not going to pay, somebody else has to pay. So everybody's paying for something that they didn't even nothing to do with it. Fear, resentment, and self-centeredness distorts everything. I can't see the truth. So for me, step 4 began the forgiveness because I got to see people from God's perspective, and I got to see that my behavior was no different from theirs. And I was able to see that these behaviors that I was so asleep to were the blocks that were interfering with the spiritual way of life. And those blocks also need to come down so the life force can flow. Step 5, freedom from secrecy to freedom. So when we speak the truth about ourselves, shame begins to lose its power. Secrets stop controlling us, and we experience acceptance instead of judgment. We think that we're going to be judged. But it's so powerful when you sit in a fit step with another human being. See, we were so separated, thinking that we were separated, right? Like we don't feel how connected we are with the rest of the human race. But a fit step is powerful. It's you, another human being, and God. And all of a sudden, you're able to be honest and share, and they're sharing back, and they're not making you feel less than. They're making you feel like a human being who's not relying upon God, and the best that we can do is the best that we can do. And for the first time, we're fully known and still accepted. This is where we begin to heal. A weight is lifted, and we feel connected with God and his children. I've had so powerful footsteps that I was rendered speechless. I had a footstep that I felt the warmth of God wash over me, and I never wanted to leave. It was so powerful, and I just rested in it until it passed. Secrets and shame, it's like mold. They fester. And, when there's mold in your house, what do they tell you? You got to get that mold out because it starts growing. So we're able to get all of that guilt and shame that we've been carrying around, bring it to the light. It loses its power. And we get freedom. This is about how free do you want to be? This is a question that we're asked. How free do you want to be? So step 6, we begin to see clearly. We stop defending defects and becoming willing for God to deal with them. We stop saying, well, this is just who I am. If you don't like me, screw you. No, We get to see how hurtful they are and how that's, if our job is to be purposeful and useful, then being manipulative and being unkind and being judgmental is going to interfere with God's way for me. We begin to see these defects are not really who we are. They were the ways we tried to survive, and they now block peace, love, and usefulness. Here's a question. Am I willing for God to remove what I can now see as blocking my peace and usefulness? Step 7, surrendering the false self. We stop trying to fix ourselves. If I've always been impatient, I don't know what patient looks like. I need to ask God to show me. Show me how these principles work, because I don't have a lot of practice with them. So instead, we ask God to remove. And why are we asking him to remove these defects? Because we want to flow with love, with usefulness and connection, manipulation, all of the defects. We can't feel the love within. We start managing and start relying. We start trusting. So step 7 is a continuation of step 3. So we make this decision in step 3 to transfer over authority. God, I'm transferring my thinking and my life, my actions over to you. So the action we take in 4 and the awakening that happens in 4, 5, and 6, so that we can experience enough humility that we realize, you know what, God, I do need you. So it's the same awakening, what we experience with drugs and alcohol, the humility that, oh my God, I can't live. God did for me what I couldn't do for me with drugs and alcohol. God does with me what I can't do for me. And that's changing me. I can't change me because I don't know what to change into, because like I said, I have no experience. So surrendering the false self, we did this slide. So a new way of meeting life. See, I used to bump up against life. I bumped up against life. I can meet life. When we give God all of ourselves, we stop deciding what should or shouldn't be happening. We stop managing the good and despairing over the bad. Instead, we learn how to stay present, trust God with outcomes, and meet life as it unfolds. So really what we're doing is we're putting all responsibilities and care upon God. And we rest and trust in him absolutely until we can learn to do this absolutely. And every opportunity is one to grow, to learn, and to share. So there's no good or bad. You know, sometimes I believe that I have these experiences with certain behaviors so that I can get on the other side of it and I can share how these things cropped up, what I did, and how I got on the other side of it. So there is no bad experience. This is where emotional sobriety deepens in this new way of life. So how do we know change is happening? We begin to notice, and this is the thing, we notice that we're pausing more instead of reacting. Resentment doesn't live in us as long. We can be angry, but it doesn't stick and stay. We become more aware of other people. We care less about being right, and peace shows up more often. And it is a thing that we begin to notice. Oh, wow, wait a minute. How is this happening? This is the miracle. We start realizing that something is happening to us. And these are the signs that a new way of life is starting to take hold. So where freedom really gets real in steps 8 and 9. So what do? We make the list. We know this list from our inventory in step 4. We face the harm. See, I always say that step 8 and 9 is a miracle of 7 because we're not walking alone, right? We're asked God, take all of me. So I shouldn't be afraid to face the harm. We make these amends. We stop justifying behavior. We stop minimizing our behavior, and we stop defending. So when we make these amends, it breaks pride, denial, and self-protection. And humility clears the way for peace. And I think this is something that I didn't recognize this right away, but others get to see a miracle before their very eyes. They get to see the change that occurred, because the last time they saw me, I wasn't looking them in the eye. I was looking a hot mess. And also, too, these amends enable others to share so that they can be free, because most people don't. They're too afraid to admit when they've done something wrong. They get a chance to see us do it. And so in that amends process, maybe it's an opportunity for them to share. Remember, it says that the unexpected happens. We never know what's going to happen in this amends process. We become demonstration of emotional sobriety, freedom. Freedom follows humility, but I've got to express the humility first. I gotta admit that I'm not this great big such a much. Do the work, and then something happens. So we don't manufacture this change. We don't create emotional sobriety by trying harder. It appears as we practice honesty, surrender control, repair harm, and seek God daily. When these blocks are removed, a new way of living begins to appear. So step 3, build with me and do with me. So together as one. Remember, in step 3, it's build with me. I'm a partner with God. God and I become one. And so look what starts happening. The transformation, the bedevilments on page 52 and the promises that are on page 83, 84. We were having trouble with personal relationships. Now we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. We couldn't control our emotional natures. Now we will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. We were a prey to misery and depression. Now our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. We couldn't make a living. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We had a feeling of uselessness. Now that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We were full of fear. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We were unhappy. We were going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how your experience can benefit others. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. So the thing that's interesting is how these things happen. And it doesn't take a lot of effort for God. Like, these things are going to slip away. Things are just going to change. Things are going to leave us. Things are going to disappear. We're going to intuitively know how to handle situations. There's going to be freedom that appears. There's going to be happiness that occurs. I couldn't get off page 52. 52 was my entire life, all my life. And I thought that drugs and alcohol was going to be the solution for it. And the drugs and alcohol became the problem for it. But going through this work, I get to see what I needed all along. I needed to be connected to the God within. And God does what God does. So we have this new way of being. So look what starts happening. We're not driven, we're guided. We're being led. Can I be okay and not know and wait until I know? That was the biggest thing for me. It felt like I was sitting on my hands so I wouldn't react. Oh my God, can I be okay and not know? Because my mind needs to know everything. But can I wait to be guided? Not reactive, but responsive. Can I respond to people and not react? Can I realize that people are not doing anything to me? They're being who they're being. If they're saying something angry, it's not, maybe it has something to do with their being angry at me. Maybe they're just angry people. Not controlling, but be connected. See, I can't be connected to all that is if I'm trying to control everything. So we are not going to just behave differently. We are becoming differently. And so life no longer meets the same person we was before we started doing this work and this new way of being. I feel like I'm a different person. The power of the pause. Emotional sobriety begins to show up when we do not react automatically. Can I pause? Can I learn to pause before speaking, pause before assuming, stop before escalating, invite God into the moment? And why is a pause so powerful? Because it creates space for a different response. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional sobriety, the power of the pause. I didn't realize that if a person asked me something or I was asked to do something, if there was a decision that needed to be made, I didn't realize that it was okay to pause and to say to a person, let me sit with this. See, I thought that I always had to do something right away because I was under the illusion and the delusion that I needed to show you how smart I was. So I needed to respond right away. And if I didn't respond right away, I would look like I didn't know. And half the time I didn't know, but I would make stuff up on the way because I thought that I needed to show up knowing. But can I pause and say, you know what? I need to sit with this for a minute. And maybe it means counsel with others. And maybe after counseling with others, I'm still unclear. So I sit quietly with God. Pause button. Living awake and staying awake. We become awake to life, but how do I stay awake? Because I don't want to go back to sleep. I do not like that manner of living where I feel so uncomfortable all the time. So we stay watchful for what can quietly take us back, because we watch for these things because they can come up when we least suspect it. I watch for resentment, fear, selfishness, dishonesty. And when they appear, we do not feed them. We notice them early. I like to use the word, I can feel the tinge when it crops up. Bring them to God quickly. So we don't rehearse them. You remember what that was like? You get into an argument with somebody, and an addict and an alcoholic, we are interesting people. I will have an argument with somebody at work on Friday. The whole weekend, I'm playing what they said, what I said, what I shouldn't say, what I shouldn't have said, what I can't wait to say on Monday. They're living their life, and all I'm doing is rehearsing this whole deal. I don't try to justify any of this behavior or let them grow. So we've got to stay watchful for what we can that will quietly take us back to feeling unfulfillment again. So resentment, fear, selfishness, dishonesty, those things still matter, even though we've seen it early on in the work, but we still need to watch out for them, because those things, it's like going down a rabbit hole. And all of a sudden it will blot out any goodness. So emotional sobriety requires spiritual alertness, because you're not asleep now. See, there was a time when I didn't know when I was being unkind. I didn't know when I was taking up most of the air in the room and I wasn't giving people time to share or to be who they wanted to be. See, I'm aware of that today. And the awareness protects our freedom. Because if I'm aware of something that I did, I'm going to bring it to God quickly. Freedom. So how do we stay connected to God, living in this oneness? Through prayer and meditation, we seek conscious contact, knowledge of God's will, and the power to carry it out. We stop trying to direct life. We begin to live as part of something greater than self. We're connected to all. We come into the fellowship and we're part of a we, other addicts, other alcoholics, and that we starts growing, because now we realize that God is an integral and the most important part of that we, and then that we grows, and now we're part of the universe. So God is the source. So it's important that for me, and it tells us in our literature that not afraid to talk about what God is doing in our life. So I speak in the consciousness of my oneness with God. God is no longer just on the side. God and I are one. Am I willing to believe that I sit here and it's God sharing through me, guiding me through this? Because if not, I'm going to be very nervous, and I'm going to start thinking, oh my God, what am I talking about? I don't even know if they're understanding me. Prayer and meditation keeps us aligned, because our connection with God is what sustains life. And interesting, because when we're connected to God, it's like we become instruments in this orchestra of life. Each of us are instruments in the symphony, and everything's flowing. We're connected to all that is. And our we just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I love this. So living connected all day long. So in the morning, we start in alignment. During the day, we stay aware. When disturbed, we correct quickly. At night, we review, and always, always, always remain grateful. So connection becomes a way of life, and this way of life brings stability. So we stay spiritually connected by practicing this way of life, the way it's outlined on this slide. And connection is not occasional. That's throughout the day. We start our day, throughout the day, end the day. This seems like a lot, right? But this is way better than worrying or being fearful, because that's how I used to spend all my day. This is not about perfection. This is not about posturing and taking credit for God. This is just wanting to be free. So emotional sobriety becomes a healing force. When we live differently, people feel it. We carry this message through our words, through our presence, through our reactions, through the way we meet life. We live recovery. So people feel recovery before they understand it. And that's how I felt with Loretta, Rashid, and Sydney. I didn't understand it. They understood me, but I didn't understand them, but I felt the difference within them. So it's important that we carry the message in how we live. Our reactions to life preach. We're not waving the book around, but it's how we're being. And if we keep this channel open, God is free to work in and through us in spite of us. We don't need to be perfect. I think it's interesting. I would, being asked to share at a meeting, and let's say that I had a day that was challenging. God does not need me to have a perfect day, an easy day for God to use me. That's my trip. Oh, I don't know if I could share because I'm not feeling too good. God laughs and goes, yeah, you think you got something to do with it. I just need you to be in position. Freedom. Live free. So the ripple effect as our we grows, when we are emotionally sober, we build trust with people. We lower fear within ourselves and other people. People sense that they don't have to be afraid of us. We model peace and we create safety. So emotional sobriety is never only personal. It's not just for us. It changes relationships. It changes the energy in the room. And it can change communities because we go out into the world and peace spreads through people. It's a ripple effect and love spreads. So living in this solution, were you meant to just survive? Or were you meant to become a light in the lives of others? Emotional sobriety allows us to live with peace, usefulness, purpose, and spiritual sobriety. So do you want to just survive, or do you want to be a light, a messenger, an agent bringing hope to others? What is your choice to be? What will you choose? Remember, vision for you, abandon yourself to God as you understand God, and admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And this is from the Vision of You, A Vision for You on page 164. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be of service. Thank you so much.